Hello, Laura.
Hello, Stephanie.
We are here with your November horoscope.
I can't believe it's almost the end of the year.
Isn't it wild?
It's wild. Time is moving by really fast. But yeah, how have you been?
October was a shit show,
Yeah,
I would
October
say.
was crunchy for a lot of people.
Yes, which we talked about in our forecast.
Mhm.
And we're definitely going to start off with a recap. So, do you want to take it away? October started off with a bang. We were like in the midst of eclipse season.
Yes. On October, like first-ish, I feel like a lot of people were still grappling with the post-Hurricane Helene that destroyed Asheville, North Carolina. And this was after the eclipse in Pisces, which was the first one of the series. And for me personally, it was shocking to see a mountain town be devastated by a hurricane. And it just really reinforced how none of us are safe and
Hmm.
the lack of investment in US infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah. And like climate change is a global issue and it's fueled by capitalism and genocides and all of the things. I think it really put into perspective how all of these things are interconnected and intertwined.
Yeah. And what was really shocking was that in the midst of that, the US sent another $8.7 billion in weapons to Israel.
Right.
And that just, I don't know, there's so many times when you're like, when is it going to be enough is enough? And I feel like there was something happening during that time where I was witnessing and watching people really start to wake up in a more meaningful way. Like, oh no, we are in some deep trouble.
And wasn't it announced FEMA had like a I can't remember, but like $9 billion shortage or something like that. And it's like, oh, too bad we're sending the money to Israel to murder people and commit
Yes.
genocide.
Yes. And it just showed like if I was to be, you know, or a natural, which they're not even natural disasters anymore. They're really fueled by, as you said, like the military industrial complex and the extractive nature of our late stage capitalistic society, but they would not help us. We would just be left to our own devices.
Yeah, that's what's happening right now in our country. So
Yeah.
I think, like you said, though, that it was a moment of more people waking up and thinking about, in true Libran essence, like what is just, what is fair, the balance of the scales. Clearly, this is, it really highlighted the injustices that were going on around the world and on our home front as well.
Yes. And unfortunately, as we mentioned last month, there were all of these water trines, and you never know how these things are going to manifest, but how it manifested was hurricanes and flooding.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yes, such a good point. Astrology can be literal, and that's a beautifully horrific delineation.
Yeah, it was literal.
Hmm.
And it wasn't just in the US. Like I saw on TikTok that parts of Asia, parts of Europe were also experiencing devastating flooding. And so it wasn't just a US thing, it was a global thing.
Yeah.
So the end of September to October, mid-October was we were in the eclipse season and
Hmm.
it was very intense. There it just seemed like every time I opened my phone there was something else going on.
Yep.
And on October 2nd, Israel bombed central Beirut.
That footage is because it's still going on, but it's just at that time, Israel was bombing Palestine, I think Syria, um, and Lebanon. And, it's like all of these places. Like, what is the common denominator?
Mhm. Yeah, I actually didn't look up Lebanon's chart, but I'm sure it's being activated because it seems like there must be some pattern that's repeating from 2006.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to
Uh,
look that up for next month.
next month. On October 5th, I remember Mercury was square Mars in Cancer, and I'm traveling in Korea with my family, and my dad almost got into a fight with my mom's cousin over politics.
Classic delineation.
I was like, oh my God, what are the transits for today? And then lo and behold, I was like, oh, okay.
That could not be any more like Mars and Cancer family, Mercury and Libra, your thoughts and values, right? Communicating those.
Yeah, it was my dad was asking a question about the president of Korea, who apparently is very controversial. And to me, I was like, oh, he's just curious, like what Korean people think of the Korean president. But apparently, I don't know if this is a Korean thing or just my family thing, but uh, talking about politics is like um, not okay. So
Um,
they started to get into an argument, and everyone was like, stop talking about politics. And I'm like, but everything is political. So
mhm.
that was October 5th.
And that interaction, Mercury and Mars, was like a big foreshadower. So whatever was like taking place for you around that time and in the collective, we kept seeing it play out because then the sun came and squared Mars. Then we had the full moon that lit it all up. So you can definitely see those storylines continuing to play out throughout the month, that
Yes.
tension.
On October 7th, it was the 1 year anniversary of, if you want to say, Hamas attacking the music festival and also the beginning of the, I guess, live stream genocide that we're continuing to watch. I found this day to be very interesting because, yes, everyone was sharing like tributes and stuff, but I also watched this interview. Did you see this interview between Ta-Nehisi Coates and the CBS News reporter? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was going viral, and I just thought that was such a also um, like symbolic 1 year marker of how a year ago people were afraid to talk about Palestine.
Hmm.
And then now you have this very well known, respected journalist, activist. He's considered like progressive and liberal. Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is an author who was promoting his new book, talking about the apartheid and occupation in Palestine on like a morning Western news show. So I thought it was like, wow, that is so such a big deal. And it happened on like the day after, 2 days after the Mercury and Libra square Mars in Cancer. And it was Mercury was applying to a trine to Jupiter and Gemini. And I just like the one sentence that keeps repeating in my mind, Ta-Nehisi Coates was just like, you're either against apartheid or not. Like it's very simple. And
Hmm.
yeah, that interview went viral.
Yeah, he just made so many important points, and I think he was able to really shift the narrative and perspective. And because it went viral, like I hope it touched and impacted many people's lives.
Yeah. It was very exciting to watch, I have to say.
It was definitely Mercury square Mars, like personified.
Yes. I was like, don't back down.
No, he did amazing. I'm like in the moment, like you're on air, all of the things, like so that was beautifully executed by him.
Yes. October 10th, Hurricane Milton was going to touch down in Florida. And I think all of the things that I'm mentioning were just observations that I made during eclipse season and how, Pluto is at the last degree of Capricorn, and it's just also exposing the like late stage capitalism, like the history of and legacy of colonization of the US, and how we're kind of like witnessing the ramifications of that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just saw meteorologists like crying on air for the first time,
I saw that too.
which I was like, what stage of capitalism is this? I'm sorry I'm
Yeah.
laughing. I do that to like expel energy that I feel is heavy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, this is really sad.
Never have I ever seen a meteorologist cry on air.
And it was scary to watch.
Mm-hmm.
If they're scared, then we should be scared.
Mm-hmm.
So then on October 15th, the sun was square Mars, and this was also leading up to the full moon in Aries. 19-year-old Shaban al-Dulu was connected to an IV drip because he was recovering from a head injury from an Israeli airstrike on his refugee camp, essentially. And he was burned alive along with his mother after the IOF bombed the Al Aqsa Martyrs Hospital complex in Deir el Balah. So he was murdered a day before his 20th birthday, which would make him a Libra. And it was the full moon in Aries, which is a cardinal fire sign. So it was really literal.
Yeah. And yeah, it was an image that went viral, a story that went viral. And I think that this was another moment that cracked people open for, like you said, he was attached to an IV drip. He burned alongside his mother. His siblings watched him. It was all recorded on video. They bombed, it was a hospital complex. And I don't remember it because there were so many places that they bombed that day. I don't remember if it was this place, but was this the hospital complex that was going to be used as a polio treatment center the following day?
Oh, I don't know.
One of the places that they bombed that day, one of the hospital complexes, was full of refugees who were going to be treated to prevent polio the next day. So it's like they knew that obviously they know that
Yeah.
there are civilians there, but it's just how can you uh how can you justify any of this? But it's just their ability to continue to just do these deplorable acts so obviously, and it's just getting crazier and crazier.
And we said, well, you said last month that if it's not a ceasefire, which it's not, it didn't end up happening, then it's just going to wake up more of the collective. And I don't know why it needs to take watching people burn alive to wake people up. It's
Mm-hmm. I know. It's been
like
a year of this.
yeah,
Yeah.
watching it. Unfortunately, this wasn't the first time we've watched someone burn alive. It's now like a daily occurrence that you just watch people like die in the most horrific ways.
Yeah. And like you said, like this is ongoing. Like this was captured, his death was captured on video, but it is something that happens over and over and over again. Um, and then we had the full moon that took place a few days later. And so it just all kind of like bled into that.
And on the full moon, well, I think it was the day before the full moon, but I think in Palestine it was the day of the full moon because they're a
Mhm.
day ahead.
Mhm.
Uh, the head of the resistance group, the H group,
Mhm.
Yahya Sinwar was martyred. And I just found it very symbolic that, again, it was the Aries full moon, which is the archetype of the leader, of the warrior. And there were images that went viral as well of him in a building by himself, which contradicts what Israel has been saying about him, that he like hides in Qatar and
Not
hides
underground,
not
not
under
surrounded by hostages,
or
not
human
surrounded by
shield.
civilians. Yeah.
He's living this like cushy life, you know. He was by himself. His arm was missing, or his
Mhm.
hand was missing, and he was in battle gear, and he was throwing a stick at the drone. He literally resisted until his last breath.
The very end. Like he took anything he could and fought till his
Yeah.
very last breath. Yeah.
So if there is not an Aries like symbol, I don't know what else could represent that, right?
Yeah. Well, he's become this symbol for the resistance. Israel recorded the video and they shared it as a means of trying to humiliate the Palestinian people and make them feel discouraged and like, this is over and look at this loss. But ultimately, they birthed this like resistance hero. And Yaga had said in, I think, an interview with Vice that like he had tried peaceful protests for years and years and years. And it's not like, I don't believe any life should end, right? Like, I don't believe in violence, but unfortunately, capitalism and the systems that we are living in have created oppressive environments. And in order to change, the only way to fight for your freedom is through violence with when these systems of oppression are here.
And if you look at all of the people, all of the H group leaders that they've assassinated, it's like 80, obviously 80 years of leaders that they've assassinated. And so this idea that you just take out Hamas, H group, and it's going to be like, you know, a free Israel is just like not, it's not reality. The only way to stop a resistance group is to end the occupation. Because it's
Yeah.
like, again, it's like kind of like that Libra, like there's two scales. It's like, if you're creating all of this violence through your occupation, then you're going to have a resistance group.
Yeah.
And I think it was that same article that I read that um, like he was never going to give up. Like he was never going to just like, you know, wave the white flag. Like he
Right.
was going to resist to the day he died. So I looked him up, and he founded El Majid, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, the security arm of Hamas. And it makes sense because he is a Scorpio sun and moon. He was born on a new moon in Scorpio. So it's like,
Um,
I don't know, the way he was able to be undetected for a year. And the only
mm,
reason why they found him was by accident. It wasn't
hmm
through intelligence. They just happened to be fighting a resistance like fighter, and sent up a drone to check in on who that was, and they murdered him by accident. So
hmm
I thought
Wow.
that was interesting.
Fascinating that he was a Scorpio sun and moon.
Yeah,
So martial.
very martial. Obviously, we don't have his birth time, so we don't know like if he was, you know, what his rising sign was. Yeah, I just thought that was very on brand.
Mm-hmm.
And and like you mentioned, it kind of did the opposite of what they wanted. They made him
Hmm.
into this like icon, this
Yeah.
legend. Kamala Harris was born on a full moon in Aries.
Oh, yeah.
She has her sun in Libra, moon in Aries, and she's losing to Trump in the polls with the election 2 weeks away, the US election 2 weeks away. So, like, being a full moon moment, it's her solar return. I think it was on the 21st.
Mm.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think that, she had an opportunity to win over young voters. And I think a lot of young people are really disgusted by what's happening in Palestine. And I think she fucked up.
Yeah.
She's in office now.
Mhm.
And what has she done for the Palestinian people?
Yeah.
She has power now. So, like, what's happening now is a reflection of her presidency.
Hmm.
And it's a shit show right now. And
Yeah.
Trump, obviously, he's going to be horrific and a shit show. But, that's why we have to break the two-party system.
Yes. So, what was your full moon in Aries like? Any stories?
Yeah, I just told you my best story. Okay, my story is disgusting. So the full moon was at 24 degrees, and I have my midheaven very close to there. And which means that my IC, the lowest part of my chart that has to do with my home and my living situation, we got bed bugs. And it was so gross. And it was the full moon where I realized and like got confirmation. I had someone come over to the house and check it out. And this full moon was square Mars in Cancer, which was moving through my 12th house. And these bed bugs would only bite me. I'm covered like head to toe. Literally, they would like bite my face. I was their host. It's so fucking gross. Um, but yeah, so essentially we've had to like pack up our whole house, move things out. They turned our house into an oven, which is also, I'm just thinking fire sign, right? Full moon and a fire sign. It was like 150 degrees in here. So the bed bugs are gone. I have not been bit. I'm happy to report. But it was this like absolutely chaotic, like pack up everything, almost like you're moving, getting secretly attacked, especially while I sleep. Like the 12th house is like your slumber. Um, so just very, very literal.
Yeah. I was saying to Stephanie that even the way that the bed bugs were transported via a little stuffed animal given as a gift to her daughter is so Mars and Cancer.
Yes. Yes. I know.
Oh my gosh. Are you okay though now?
Yeah, I'm so much better, but it was definitely like psychologically draining and um 10 out of 10 do not recommend.
Yeah. So when a like astrological aspect like that, like a full moon, manifests in that way through bed bugs, like in your feeling opinion, like is there a lesson or is there just it's just like it is what it is?
Well, for me, I believe that it's some sort of psychic attack. So, I think that there's maybe someone hate listening to my podcast. Hello, if this is you. I found out about you. Um, and I got rid of you. And yeah, I don't know, but I do think that there's some sort of, like energetic hygiene, better protective work that I need to be doing. I think everything that shows up in our physical world, material world, is a reflection of like our spirit and our energy and our thoughts and patterns and behaviors. And so I think for me, my biggest lesson was and takeaway was like, I need to be more diligent with protective work.
Yeah. So like yeah, the 12th house is hidden enemies and Mars also rules your fourth house of home.
Ugh, yes.
Yeah. Wow.
So literal. What about you? What was your full moon moment?
So the full moon happened in my fifth house, which is like it's like the house of pleasure and like it's like the fun house, right? And the moon and then the sun in Libra was my 11th house. And I was telling Stephanie that I was on this like group tour with 18 other people, which for some people could be a nightmare. But for me, it was a lot of like balancing the scales of like is this something that I want to engage in at the time because there's so many different political opinions and so many there were so many instances that happened that were a little harmful that were said during the trip and it was like me being the Aries opposing that I was like is this one like do I say this because it's like when you hear something you have to say something and and also this is like my home country of Korea, so it's like I felt more like it felt more offensive to me when they would say certain things that maybe they were oblivious to, you know?
Well, can I also say something?
Yes, of course.
Um, these were white people saying racist things, and it's not, the onus is not on you to teach them. So I don't think so. I just think that should be said.
Yes, yes. So there were a group of 18, and five of us were people of the global majority, and 15 were white people. And, you know, again, it's like when you have a certain level of privilege, you're blind, really. You're like, you don't know how some of your words can be hurtful. And so it was a lot of like, do I say something? Do I not? And also just being in my, like I was born in the United States, so I'm here as also a foreigner on my ancestors' land, and a lot of feelings that I've been navigating through is like filial duty and like the culture that I came from is not necessarily the culture that I grew up in. So there's this like culture shock almost.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's giving me more sense of my identity, understanding where I came from. So it's very like full moon in Aries. And I'm an Aries sun if you didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, this is a big one for you.
Yeah. But no bed bugs, thank goodness.
Let me tell you, dodged a bullet. Alrighty. Shall we dive into November's astrology? Because it is juicy.
We shall.
Okay. Well, it starts off with a bang on November 1st. We have a new moon in Scorpio. And this new moon is taking place at 9 degrees. So if you have Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius around 9 degrees, planets, placements, rising sign, you're going to feel this the most intensely. And the ruler of this full moon is the same as the last full moon in Aries. So it's Mars in Cancer at the final degree, the anaretic degree, 29 degrees, opposite Pluto in Capricorn at 29 degrees. And I think it should also be worth mentioning that this is the final time that Pluto will be at 29 degrees in our lifetimes. So that just kind of like ups the ante a little bit. And this is taking place in the first decan of Scorpio, which means it's associated with the Five of Cups in the tarot. I think that this new moon is going to be rocky and, you know, in our personal lives and in the collective. I think it's going to be a continuation from the full moon in Aries in some way. And when I think of new moons in Scorpio, they bring up deep feelings. They reveal like taboo topics and dark things, you know, what's been hidden in the shadows. And they're often all about release and letting go. So it has that kind of like opposite quality when they say like new moons are about new beginnings. I think the new moon in Scorpio, the purpose of it is to shed.
I have my Jupiter at 9 degrees, so I'm very familiar with this deacon of Scorpio. And when you look at the tarot card, it's somebody kind of with their head down in a cloak, staring at the three cups that have fallen. And in the back, there's two cups that are still standing. And what I feel about this new moon is allowing yourself to grieve, allowing yourself to feel all the like negative feelings that we try to avoid feeling as a human, because there's such an opportunity during Scorpio season to alchemize the grief, but you have to feel it first. And just the month of October alone, like, have we done enough processing?
Mm,
Because it's like we went from two hurricanes to like an ongoing like polycrisis, and it's like, are we giving ourselves space to like process all of this? Like,
yeah.
then we're just supposed to go to work and we're supposed to make
Right.
money to live.
Yep. Yep. Pay your rent.
Not normal.
Mm-hmm.
None of this is normal. So while these are very intense energies, I think it's the universe giving us the space to like allow ourselves to feel, so that we can like fully be in the feeling so we could alchemize it.
I like that. Yeah. And I think one of Scorpio's greatest gifts and lessons is that when you engage with your fears and the feelings you've avoided, like through alchemy, that's usually when you get the biggest reward on the other side. And like in the Five of Cups, the figure on the card is focused on the four cups that have spilled over, but there's one cup behind them that's standing upright and it's still full.
Mhm.
So, there still is something to be, you know, grateful for, but allow yourself to feel your feelings first.
Yeah, I love that advice. I forgot about the two cups in the back.
Mm.
And Mars and the moon have mutual reception, but both are fallen. So
Mm.
yeah, it's like it's kind of a sad, melancholy new moon.
Yeah. So sad November, here we come.
Yeah, but it is new moons are for new intentions and for like setting intentions. And so I think it is a moment to be really honest with your feelings.
It could be a great time to set the intention to reclaim your power, to face some fears, um, and even to pray for revenge.
Was not expecting that. Yes.
you know, on behalf of everyone who deserves that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. November 2nd is a busy, busy day. We have Mercury and Scorpio meeting up with Mars in Cancer and then meeting up with Pluto in Capricorn. And they're forming trines and sextiles. So this is interesting because the following day on the 3rd, they're going to form Mars and Pluto are forming an exact opposition. So that energy of the full moon or the full moon and the new moon is still carried over. But first, there's some sort of like integration of information or understanding conversations or um it goes a little bit smoother.
Mhm.
Or it's like maybe this is a moment where you understand the final arc of your story or like the final boss that you have to fight,
Mhm.
the final sacrifice you have to make, or the fear that you've been avoiding, the conversation you've been avoiding, and you understand the purpose of it all.
Yeah. Oh, I
And
like
then
that.
you just have to do it.
Yes. Yeah, there's something about like um you set this intention on the new moon on the first, the second. Mercury is like, what's going on? Mars and Cancer. You've been traveling through Cancer for the last couple months, and then it speaks to Pluto and Capricorn, which has been finishing up a journey for 16 years. And then it's like, okay, what are you actually going to do about it with the Mars opposite Pluto? Because that is like an opposition, which is a full moon moment. It's like, all right, you got to do what you got to do with this information that you've just discovered. I
Yeah,
feel,
this is like,
yeah, I
yeah.
feel like it could also be something that like you're privy to that you weren't previously.
Mm-hmm.
A secret.
Yes, a secret. Also, really supportive energy for like transforming your mindset and your beliefs, letting go of limiting beliefs. Um, but it definitely feels like you're coming up with a plan. There's something obnoxious, challenging, difficult, confrontational that you have to do or face the following day. And you're like, okay, it's go time. How am I going to approach this?
Yeah, this is the moment.
Hmm. Then
And
on the 2nd, Mercury will enter Sagittarius after those two connections. And this is going to be interesting because Mercury is going to go retrograde at the end of the month on the 25th. And Mercury is said to be in detriment when it moves through Sagittarius, which can just kind of mean that we wind up with our foot in our mouth a little bit more. We are thinking really big picture, and then we can gloss over all the details, and it can be harder to like put a plan in place, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think like it being 3 days before the US election, this can also be like trying to evangelize people at the last minute to vote for somebody.
Yes.
So, ugh. Mercury and Sagittarius people who are either Sagittarius or um what's the sign before? Oh my God, Scorpios.
Hmm.
Um, they tend to like really be dogmatic in their like speaking. Like they
Yes.
know, and so nobody can like tell them otherwise.
Yes, this will be a period where you're probably going to get into a heated debate or a conflict or run into people who are trying to impose their beliefs on you. Fun fact and totally random, I have found that a lot of people with Mercury and Sagittarius have like powerhouse like singer voices. Like I
Oh,
I think like Christina Aguilera, someone else. I might be wrong, but
oh, that's a fun fact. I thought you
yeah.
were gonna say they're really good comedians.
They are. That too. I think a lot of comedians have Mercury and Sagittarius.
Wasn't Pete Davidson or
Probably.
is it in Scorpio?
I don't know. I'd have to
Okay,
check his chart.
I have to look that up.
Um, I'm gonna do a fact check here
Okay.
while we continue.
Yeah, so Stephanie already mentioned that on November 3rd, Mars in Cancer will oppose Pluto in Capricorn at 29 degrees. And I feel like Mars, we've talked about Mars opposing Pluto a couple times this year, or at least those two planets activating each other, which can be violent, right? Every time those two come together, something in the news happens.
Okay, slight detour. Pete, Mercury and Scorpio. He's dark. Let's be real. He's got that. Yeah. Um, Christina Aguilera, Mercury and Sagittarius conjunct the midheaven,
Oh,
ruled by a Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Libra.
wow.
So
Wow.
like a master of her artistic craft.
Yes.
And that's what she's known for. Beautiful.
Wow.
Beautiful. Okay, but back to yeah, I would say Mars opposite Pluto is one of the worst transits possible. And what's going to make it a little worse is that this is happening 3 times because Mars will go retrograde on December 6th. So this will be, I think, yeah, the only time that it happens with Mars in Cancer opposite Pluto in Capricorn. The next 2 times are going to be facing off between Leo and Aquarius. But that also just makes this one a little bit more intense because it's never going to happen again in our lifetimes. So, yeah, it has to do with power, control, ego, violence, destruction,
Or
um, war. Yeah. So this is when the Mars and Pluto, the connections that they've been making have aligned with things that have been unfolding in Israel and Palestine.
yeah,
So, and like you said earlier, this is like a full moon moment. So, yes,
yeah.
we'll want to pay attention to the news around this time.
Because Mars and Pluto were a part of the solar eclipse story on October 14th, 2023. And then it was a part of this full moon in Aries story as well. And both times it was like visible escalations.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to think of like positive manifestations of this. I think like last month we said, if it's not a ceasefire, we've been saying that almost like every month since 2023. But if
Mm-hmm.
it's not a ceasefire, then it's again another moment that wakes up more of the collective. Personally, again, maybe I'm projecting, but because this is like the 10th, 12th iteration of a Mars at Pluto, maybe that this is like more action, you know, from the collective and taking actual action instead of like just knowing about what's going on, but more collective action.
I would hope so. And I think even with the recent stories that have been coming out in the past few days, like the IOF has been rounding up Palestinians and separating women and children from men and lining them up. And they have dug mass graves and they have executed them. And then there was also that uh, story from CNN that, did you see this? Where they interviewed an IOF soldier who was talking about how he's facing like suicidal ideation, and he's having trauma. And in the story he literally says, I ran over Palestinians dead and alive in the hundreds.
Yes.
And CNN ran this story with a headline that was focused and framed, he survived Gaza and now he struggles with trauma. And it was all about this Israeli soldier and his quote unquote trauma, when in the actual story, he has admitted to unbelievable acts of genocide in the hundreds. Those together have been just coming out in the past few days at this time of recording. And I don't know how people see those two things. And, you know, along with everything else that has been unfolding, it's like, at what point can you keep turning away and saying, geez, that's awful?
Mhm. Yeah, what I noticed was the centering of his feelings and his experience. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, duh, if you are killing hundreds of people, wouldn't you have mental health issues?
Would think so.
Yeah. And how can we give advice for people's personal lives with a Mars opposite Pluto?
Okay. I would say be extra safe,
Mhm.
because this can be a time of challenging situations popping up in your personal life. So, you know, that just move through your day more carefully, not to like fear monger. You don't have to like stay and hide in bed all day, but just don't put yourself in a compromising situation, right? Um, and I think this can also be just a really emotional day. Mars is in Cancer at the final degree. And, if you are privileged and able to take a personal day, if you're able to um, just cancel plans, don't force yourself to be, if you do have to work, like, don't force yourself to be productive that day. Like, save it for Monday, you know, or front load things earlier in the week, because whatever is unfolding on this day is going to feel intense and jarring and activating. And in a positive way, I would say this is really lovely energy for shattering cycles, facing your
Mhm.
fears. Um, but that requires your courage and you to go there.
Yeah. I was gonna say like make a bold move.
Mhm.
Um, I took Cameron Allen's like class for remediating planets,
Mm.
and it was so helpful because throughout this class he always emphasized how we should like embody the planets and feel what it is that they're asking us to do, because we live in this very dualistic experience as humans. And so just to hide away from Mars and Pluto is not necessarily sometimes like the best thing either. It's like, okay, if I'm embodying Mars and Cancer wants me to feel the feels and like take action from that place,
Mhm.
from a place of courage, and finally maybe stepping up to an abusive situation
Yeah.
that's been ongoing for a long time. Maybe this is the moment where you break up with that person or you quit that job or you finally speak up for yourself.
Yes, it definitely highlights toxic power struggles and dynamics and can be a moment of you reclaiming your power. And later on in the day, Mars will enter Leo. And then we're going to have Mars retrograde on December 6th, and it starts off while in Leo. Um,
You
I
have
would
Mars.
say, I was going to say, I have my Mars in Leo. I think in general, when Mars is in Leo, it's a great time to focus on yourself, to focus on your needs, your desires, your creative projects, anything that like brings you joy, that make helps you connect or feel like a child or a teen again. Um, you can funnel a lot of your energies into those types of activities. Can be a good time to go after who and what you want and to work on your confidence. Now, our egos will also be bruised very easily when Mars is in Leo. So that will be something to pay attention to.
Mhm. Childhood play, like
Mm-hmm.
playing with your child, doing things you like to do as a kid. And yeah, you forgot Venus and Sag opposing Jupiter and Gemini, I think.
Oh, of course, because it's like sweet and happy. And there's just so much horrendous stuff going on. Okay, so this is good. So November 3rd, we've just really painted a dim picture, but now we're going to shake up the palette a little bit. We've got Venus and Sagittarius forming an opposition with Jupiter and Gemini, and this is taking place at 20 degrees. So again, mutable planets placements around 20 degrees. This is a sweet spot for you. And given everything that's unfolding on the during that day, this will be a little bit of a sweet spot. And
Mhm.
you could learn news that's worth celebrating. Um, this can kind of kick up the tendency to overdo it. So you'll want to just not overexert yourself, but in general, this can be a great time for connection, making progress in some of your goals. What do you think?
I think it's a flirty and fun aspect. It's like Venus and Sagittarius is answering to the Jupiter and Gemini. That is retrograde, because if you didn't know, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. And I think it's a good moment to just like go out there and flirt and
Mm-hmm.
talk and network.
Yeah, definitely. I like
Mhm.
that.
Travel, maybe, if you're into that. It's very
Mm-hmm.
Sagittarius and Jupiter.
Yes. Try new things. Push yourself outside of your comfort zone.
Yes.
Hmm. And then on the 4th, the sun in Scorpio is going to form a trine with Saturn in Pisces at 12 degrees. And this is going to feel kind of like a soothing balm, which is nice. We're able to process some of our emotions with a mature lens. You could also gain recognition for some hard work and effort. This could be a time where, like, one of your something you're really investing in, or even an emotional investment, is maybe starting to take off.
Yeah. You said it all.
um, and then the 7th, Mercury enters the pre retrograde shadow period at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So, this is when you're going to want to start paying attention to your Mercury retrograde storylines, inconveniences, annoyances, people who are showing up in your world. They're all going to be a part of your retrograde story. So, just kind of tune in.
Yeah. I find for me personally that the shadow is my actual retrograde, and the
Mm.
retrograde is the time where I like reflect about it and like process. And then the post shadow is when I like course correct and like take action.
Mm.
That's why, yeah, that's why I always pay attention to it.
I was literally just thinking that today because I was like thinking about this bed bug situation and I'm like, are these things going to come back? No. I was like, this has got to be the worst part of it. And then
Mhm.
the retrograde is like my lessons like we talked about, and then the
Yes.
course correction. Yeah, totally. So it's definitely worth paying attention to. I journal every day, and every time a retrograde begins, you can track the shadow periods to a T. Like when Mercury went retrograde in Virgo, I'm a lifelong vegetarian and I ordered food and I ate chicken for the first time. There was like chicken hidden in my food. And I was like, Joey, why does this taste so good? What is this? You know? And he's like, oh my goodness.
Oh,
And and then the day that Mercury retrograde ended in Virgo, I ordered food again because I had been too scared to order food the whole retrograde, but I had finally ordered food again and it was scrumptious and vegetarian.
ah, I was gonna say, did you did you turn into not a vegetarian?
No, 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 no. But
That's
yeah,
on brand.
yeah, you got to pay
Um,
attention.
and I think the degrees are between 6 and 22 of Sagittarius. So if you have those degrees in your mutable signs, you also want to see if they're activating your placements.
Yes, because the last retrograde in Sagittarius from I think December 15th through January 1st, the station point was 22 degrees Sagittarius. So it is quite literally picking up at the exact same point in the sky as the last retrograde in Sagittarius. So
Of
think
last,
about yeah, of last year. So think about what was kind of like unfolding for you in December because it's coming back up.
which is so funny because when I read this, I was like, oh, that's when my TikTok account got banned. 27 degrees.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder what that means. Like, am I gonna get banned again?
Or maybe you're gonna blow up even more and go viral. Who
Maybe.
knows? Let's
Or
call
get
that
rid
in.
get rid of TikTok because I keep watching videos of TikTok is still banned. Like they're gonna it passed the what is it? The bill, remember?
Oh God, really?
Yeah. No, let's not think about that right now.
Just another day on Earth. Okay, yeah, let's not. November 9th, Venus in Sagittarius forms a square with Neptune in Pisces at 27 degrees. Venus square Neptune, I would say, in general, is a time where you can put other people on a pedestal and that can be to your own detriment.
Yeah. Like
Sometimes it's really romantic and ooey gooey vibes, but sometimes it's like sensitive and also irritating things in relationships too.
yeah, I think this is like the savior complex. It's like
Mm.
uh, feeling like somebody is going to like being attracted to somebody because you feel like they're going to save you in some way,
Or you can save them.
or you can save them. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it is
That's
the rose colored glasses aspect. So just be careful that if you do attract somebody on this, because it's a very attractive placement, like
mm-hmm.
maybe wait a couple days to see if you feel the same way.
Yes. We're not seeing things clearly. Neptune is fog. Um, I would say processing your emotions through art or an artistic medium could be great around this time.
Yeah.
And on the 11th, Venus is going to enter Capricorn. And this is the time to lock someone down. This is it. You've been wanting to get serious. Now's your chance.
Cupping season, is that what it's called?
We want the 15-year plan.
Yes.
Capricorn ruled by Saturn, commitment. Um, and I think Venus in Capricorn is also very good at their craft. So if there is, you know, whatever your craft may be, this could be a time to hone it even more, gain attention for it. Um, yeah, you might be attracted to people with an age gap, whether they're older or younger.
Somebody who's more stoic and serious, more disciplined, responsible.
Hmm.
It's us, it's Venus and Capricorn is also into like tradition and I'm thinking of like Kate Middleton. I don't know if she has Venus. I think she has Venus in Aquarius, but she's a Capricorn and
Hmm.
it's like a very traditional lady.
Hmm. 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 Yeah. So kind of a more serious Venus. Um, but that could be good for some people.
Yes.
Then on the 12th, Mercury in Sagittarius forms a square with Saturn in Pisces, also at 12 degrees.
Mhm.
This could be a day where, TBH, maybe you struggle with your mental health a little bit. Maybe you're feeling a little depressed. Maybe you're feeling low. Maybe you receive a no and you were hoping for a yes, or there is some sort of obstacle or a roadblock that is out of your control.
Mhm. Yeah, like Mercury in Sag is like, I'm just gonna say whatever I want, and then Saturn in Pisces is like, no, you can't. Or I'm gonna start this business and I'm gonna be, huge, and Saturn in Pisces is like, no.
Yes, yes. You can definitely, your words can get you in trouble today.
Yeah.
But this could be a moment where you need to take action because it's a square and set a boundary or talk about expectations or have like a more difficult conversation.
Yes. I
And
love.
these are like in Jupiter ruled signs, so tension and confrontations could stem from our belief systems and our understanding of the world
Mhm.
as well.
And boundaries I've learned can also help you be more expansive,
Oh
because
yeah.
like Mercury and Saturn are in Jupiter ruled signs, like you said. So it's like, the expansion is there.
Then the 15th is a biggie. We have Saturn ending its retrograde in Pisces at 12 degrees, and it's going to bring us back to June 29th because that's when the retrograde began. And then on the same day, we have a full moon in Taurus that is conjunct Uranus at 25 degrees. So, and you made a really excellent point in the notes. The ruler of the full moon is going to be Venus in Capricorn. And at the time of the full moon, that Venus is forming a square to the nodes of fate and destiny. So anytime a planet forms a square with the nodes of fate and destiny, it can feel kind of like a little mini eclipse moment. And because that planet, Venus, is the ruler of this full moon, it's going to bring that kind of speeding up of timelines and surrendering and major life events and shifts, making that more intense.
Mhm. It's an exalted moon in Taurus, which is cute.
Mm.
And it's conjunct Uranus, like you mentioned. So there could be some surprise manifestation of something unexpected. And unexpected can be either good or bad. It's not like yay. It could be, something that you don't expect, but just pray for the highest outcome for the good of all.
Yeah. And oftentimes the Taurus Scorpio axis has to do with our resources, the way that we resource ourselves, and life and death, but also, permanence, impermanence, um, the present moment versus like fear of the future and the unknown. So, all of these areas, topics, there could just be sudden, swift revelations, changes in some way.
Yeah. So you also mentioned Saturn retrograde in Pisces ends. Um, how has your Saturn in Pisces manifested for you?
Ugh, the worst. So, Saturn is in my eighth house, and it's all about money, being paid my worth,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, paying off debt. I acquired a lot of debt last year when Saturn first entered Pisces. It's been just very like money,
Literal.
literal. And it's the house of death as well. And so the first part of it, I almost died,
Mhm.
literally. And it was opposite my Venus. That was when I was giving birth. So that's also been part of my story. And I'm very curious and nervous slightly to see what will happen when the retrograde ends because it's going to be at the same exact point as it was in the sky on the day that I gave birth slash almost died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's like a metaphorical death. Let's pray.
Let's pray because the full moon is also square my nodes.
Ooh.
So I'll
Whoa.
be staying inside on the 15th.
In Taurus.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know.
That makes sense because Saturn rules your sixth house of work. And so you've just been like crunching it out,
Grinding.
grinding it out. Yeah.
Yes.
Ugh.
What about you?
So Saturn has been transiting my fourth house of like family, parents, and like ancestors. And so right now I'm visiting my ancestral lands.
Mm-hmm.
But Saturn also rules death. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Saturn's symbol is the scythe. So I was sharing with Stephanie that I've been visiting a lot of my ancestral graves and like burial sites and like talking about death with my parents. And I've found out that my dad doesn't talk about death at all, which is interesting because it's such a huge part of our culture. And yeah, so it's quite literal for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're all
So,
gonna die. That's what I literally like. um every time I fly, my sister and she gets afraid, and I'm like, if we're meant to die, it's like, who's gonna how can you control death, you know?
right, right. I know. I was just thinking today, the only thing that we are promised is like impermanence and change.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
so it'll be an interesting day. You'll definitely feel the energy of these transits, no matter what planets you have in your chart, or what signs you have in your chart. And it's going to continue over onto the 16th when the sun in Scorpio forms an exact opposition with Uranus and Taurus. So that full moon kind of feels like a 2-day event.
Yeah. So Taurus at 25 degrees reminds me of all the Uranus conjunctions we had back in July at
Mm.
like 25, 26 degrees.
Mm.
Now it's the opposition.
And that's when Trump got shot
Yeah,
at.
yes.
Mm.
So I'm not saying that I'm manifesting that at all, but like I feel like that's a continuation of his story too, because I think his midheaven is at like
20.
26 degrees of Taurus. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mars conjunct his ascendant in Leo at like
Mm-hmm.
29, I think, on
Yep.
Regulus.
He'll be in the news around that time for sure. I think in general, just some buzzwords for Sun Uranus, like it's a day to take a risk. You might surprise others. Plans aren't going to go, as you had hoped for. Like sudden things can pop up. Um, but you can also have really big downloads, intuitive ideas and insights. And yeah, it's a great day to try something new.
But those fixed signs, I'm saying, like, they are very,
Yeah.
very on their course. And it's hard to, you know, it's hard for a fixed place person to change until they really need to.
No, you're
I,
telling me.
yeah, and I'm saying that as someone with fixed sign placement. So,
Yeah.
no.
It's almost like you know, deep, deep feelings, sense of comfort, like your sense of stability is like rattled in a big way when there's change in fixed signs, maybe. Okay, what's next?
November 18th, Mercury in Sagittarius opposite Jupiter and Gemini at 18 degrees. We have another mutual reception, Mercury and Jupiter. And think back to Mercury and Jupiter conjunction in Gemini on June 14th. And now it's the opposition.
Oh, okay. So this is picking up a story from around that time. The mutual reception means that there's a little extra help and luck. I'd say watch out for over exaggerators, over promising, over committing. It can really be easy to like bite off more than you can chew with this
Mhm.
energy. But it could be also a great time for activism work to help change someone's perspective and beliefs and understandings.
Yeah, I was just going to say that because, Mercury likes to focus on the nitty gritty of the detail and like gather information to understand. I mean, have you ever met like a Gemini person?
Mm.
And then Jupiter likes to have just a, belief. I want to believe even if I don't see the evidence of it. And since they're in each other's signs, it is maybe reflecting on your beliefs. And are they serving you? Are they maybe holding you back from connecting with people?
Mm-hmm. And on the same day, the sun in Scorpio forms a trine with Neptune in Pisces. And that's going to be like a very compassionate, gentle energy. So it kind of like sets the foundation in the background up pretty well for you to have some of those like deeper conversations.
November 19th is the day we've been waiting for. But I was like, are we?
I know, I know. I love that in the note. Like, oh my God, should we be scared? So Pluto's going to enter Aquarius for the rest of our lives. No, at least for the next 20 years.
Yes.
Um, it'll be in Aquarius till 2043. And it first re entered Aquarius on January 30th. Then it went retrograde on May 2nd. And then it moved back into Capricorn on September 1st. And then the retrograde ended October 11th. So all of those dates are connected. There is a storyline there. I think that this is going to be a palpable shift, that everyone will notice it because you're wrapping up a 15, 16-year cycle in the Capricorn section of your chart.
Mm-hmm. And I remember on January 20th when Pluto entered Aquarius, I felt like, like a weight had lifted off my shoulders. And I'm sure like people with late degree cardinal placements felt the same way. They felt like, oh gosh, my karmic test is ending. And then it went back and you're like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that feeling of, oh, this is what Pluto in Aquarius is going to be like. But then experiencing the darker aspects of Pluto in Aquarius very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like the first, I don't know, the first block of all the Pluto transits, the darker sides come up, but it takes time because it's such a long transit.
Mm-hmm. I just want to give you a personal example of how it impacted me. So, Aquarius is my third house. And that is when my videos started going like mega viral, like
Mm.
2 million views, 1 million views. And at the time, I was working with a climate organization. And it would scare me because
Mhm.
every time it would go viral, I would get scared because of the backlash, of the trolling, but also I kept getting violations of like community guidelines, so
Mhm.
it's extreme. So
Mhm.
it's like, oh, my videos were getting a million views, but then it was bringing out like the shadow aspects of social media,
Mhm.
and it really scared me. So it brought up fears.
Yes, always brings up fears. Yeah. It's a big one. So you're going to want to tune into the Capricorn and Aquarius sections of your birth chart because there's going to be major shifts that are unfolding around that time. And a new whole set of karmic lessons for you to embark on.
Yes.
Yay! But like we have talked about in the past, and we have like covered this so in depth in so many of our other recordings, but ultimately, Aquarius is a zodiac sign that is about the collective. It is about those that are on the fringes of society, the margins. And Pluto is a planet of power and transformation. So by the end of this transit, so mote be, the people, power to the people.
Yes, we the people, which is in the US Constitution. And honestly, during this time, I feel like we're going to be living in a completely different country, the US.
Yeah. It's going to get worse before it gets better. We'll just say that.
Yeah. And I think it's going to, I think technology is going to get even more advanced and, well, obviously the dark and the light sides of that. Um, Again, like just projecting and putting out the best possible scenario that more people get connected
Yes.
into, like, more power to the people. but yeah, it's an air sign. So
Mm-hmm.
see.
We'll see. And then a couple days later, on the 21st, the sun enters Sagittarius, and it will also form a gentle sextile with Pluto in Aquarius. And this is my favorite day of the month. Um,
The only day.
this is the only day I like. No, literally every month on my Patreon, link in bio, I offer an electional chart. And this is the only day. I went through every single day painstakingly, and I was like, this is the only cute day.
It's a huge vibe shift. I
It
mean, Sagittarius season is fun.
Yes. And it's meeting with Pluto in a sweet way, which allows you to embody a more authentic version of yourself, to like show up fully, face your fears, feel more confident. And I think the
Yeah.
moon is doing something cute that day too. I think it's making like gentle connections with the other planets. So, like, as far as the first half of the month is like pretty intense, especially leading up to that full moon. And then I think this is like the moment to whew, kind of like exhale.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that day. That's cute. I would maybe even say something bold on social media,
Mm-hmm.
for example.
Definitely. Definitely. And then the 22nd, we have Venus in Capricorn forming a sextile with Saturn in Pisces, 12 degrees. Um,
That's cute.
mm-hmm.
Long-term relationship potential.
Yep. Discussing making commitments, signing contracts, making agreements, thinking about the long term, investing in a creative project, committing to your values, committing to what is just and right. It's probably also a great aspect for like activism work and using your artistic talent for like sustained efforts to make a change.
Yeah. Share your future dreams with a partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do it while you can because Mercury will go retrograde on the 25th.
It's Sagittarius.
Yes. So we kind of hashed out a lot of this earlier in the recording, but it's going to bring you back to last year's retrograde, mid-December through January 1st. And it's going to impact that Sagittarius sector of your chart.
And it's the US, this is the week of the US genocidal Thanksgiving, I think.
Oh, there we go.
Which I don't really celebrate anymore, but I know a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yikes. I feel like every year on this week um we give advice to people to mind your words, but honestly, maybe they need to be said.
Maybe they need to be said. Yeah. I think that's a better piece of advice this year. Speak out on your beliefs. And
It's,
if it shakes up your relationships, maybe that's for your own good.
and maybe that creepy uncle needs to be put in his place.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Racist auntie.
Yes. 1,000%. And then on the 27th, the sun in Sagittarius is going to form a trine with Mars and Leo. This is cute energy too.
Yeah, it's very bold. It's like fuck around and find out energy. Like, let's just figure it out. Let's just take a bold step.
Yes, we're feeling confident. We're making progress. It's very action oriented, creative energy, risk taking energy. Um, I'd say what if you have something you want to get done, whatever you choose to focus on, this is a
Mhm.
great day to like make progress. And then the end of the month on the 30th, new moon in Sagittarius. You tell us, is this on your rising sign?
Yes. So my rising is 10 degrees. So
Okay.
very close.
Yeah.
Um, but as your notes say, it's square Saturn, womp womp.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's square Saturn, and the ruler of it is Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. Um, but in the past, you have given really nice delineations of moon square Saturn.
I have?
You
Wow.
have. I remember because I was just too Grim Reaper one time and you had to do it. You were like, Stephanie, this is enough. Enough is enough. And I can't remember exactly what you said, but I remember being like, wow, thank goodness for Laura.
Well, it's so interesting because when you were pregnant, you were way more optimistic. And now, since you're not, you're back to your old ways.
Sloan has exited the building. Yeah.
Well, I always feel like squares are activations to help you to change,
Mm-hmm.
to realize that enough is enough. And that's why I really like squares, because the essence of life is change. So if we're going to talk about Saturn in Pisces, which we have for the last couple months, Saturn in Pisces is like reclaiming your faith and your beliefs and like your dreams in essentially. And
Mm-hmm.
so if the new moon in Sagittarius is about setting intentions um, for Sagittarian themes like adventure, experience, learning, um, exploring, belief again, because it's ruled by Jupiter, then squaring that is like maybe there's something that is an old calcified belief system that holds you back.
That's it. That's what you said.
That's what I said? Oh,
Yes. Yes. I love that.
yeah. And Jupiter, Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is like again, Jupiter wants to just believe, right? But in Mercury's sign, it's about collecting data and really looking at the nitty-gritty of information. And so maybe it is like reflecting on your belief systems and like really like pulling it apart and analyzing it. Like where did that come from? Did it come
Mm.
from a family of origin? Did it come from the school that you went to or whatever it is? Because Sagittarius is a very delulu sign.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I believe in myself. I believe in a God, and that is, you know, protecting us or whatever you believe. And I think it's a very hopeful, but yeah, sobering reality check moment with the square to Saturn.
Yes. But it's almost like in order to continue to chase after your dreams or whatever that may be, you have to move through this reality check moment and it's only going to help you
Mhm.
further on your path.
But I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah.
I think it's like that reality check that you need in order, right? Like to make concrete steps. Mhm.
So it's kind of it's interesting because the month starts and ends on new moons that are pretty powerful.
Mhm. Scorpio season to Sag season, it's like your phoenixing moment.
Yes.
Um, transformation is upon us. And I think November and December are gearing us up for all of the outer planets changing signs next year. So there is going to be a collective change and a collective consciousness shift. So
Massive.
yeah. But what do you have going on that if people are interested in working with you?
Well, you can listen to my podcast, which you're probably already doing. And you can join me over on Patreon, where every Sunday I release 7 episodes of your daily podcast to help you plan out your life for the week ahead so you know what kind of energy to anticipate. I also release a weekly psychic reading and a monthly spell. And I'm brewing up my first class ever, but I am not ready to make any announcements yet.
Okay, so
Um, so stay tuned. What about you? How can people support you and work with you?
well, before I get on to me, I was going to say you do daily horoscopes on your podcast, but also on TikTok,
Yes, yes, yes.
which are fire.
I try. Thank you. I try to stay consistent. I've been off the past couple days, but I'll be back. I'll be back.
Human, you need your break. It's
Mhm.
so interesting because like your videos from August are popping up on my FYP. Yeah, which I think is like an energetic algorithmic thing, because it's like even though it's not for the day, it's like it still resonates, you know? Yeah,
Oh, yeah, the algorithm just knows.
it just knows.
Hmm.
it knows what I need to hear at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just wanted to plug that. Well, so November I'll be back in the States and my books will be open. And yes, my podcast, please listen, review, rate. And that's actually the best way you can support Stephanie and I, is to do that because it helps boost up the algorithm. Check out our YouTube channel, subscribe and comment, because this is what we love to do. And this is obviously our offering to the collective every month. And
And thank you for being here.
thank you.
And we'll see you next month.
See you next month, December.